Marine Academy is the most formal military academy on the sea, and all courses are arranged with reasonable rules and regulations. This is the intellectual heritage accumulated over the years of the military academy's rich experience in training and learning. Marine 6 Styles, as an extremely powerful physical technique, is a skill that is known to be a master beyond the limits of humans. These 6 tactics integrate all aspects of offense, defense, high-speed movement, explosive breakthroughs, etc. Whether it is practicality or lethality, they are all top existing in physical skills. Of course, if you want to practice Marine 6 Styles, the prerequisite is to strengthen your physical fitness to a certain extent. Otherwise, in addition to being difficult to cultivate successfully, there may also be hidden injuries due to insufficient physical strength and inability to withstand the terrifying physical burden brought by the 6 forms. But, based on Roy's understanding of the physical fitness of the freshmen in the same military academy, most of the students in this classroom are not yet qualified to practice the 6 forms. But Zephyr decided so quickly to teach them all the training methods of Marine 6 Styles. In Roy's view, it has a sense of cultivating them. Especially in combination with all the weird situations before, Roy has a faint conjecture in his mind. An unprecedented large-scale war is about to start. Unlike other classmates who are full of excitement and want to learn Marine 6 Styles, this powerful physical technique, Roy's heart is worried. Roy, what's wrong with you? Your face looks a little ugly. Is it sick again? Or the previous injury has not fully recovered? Hina keenly sensed that Roy's expression was wrong, and stretched out her hand to pose in front of Roy. Roy was taken aback for a moment and quickly recovered, with a smile on his face, shook his head and said, "It's okay. Maybe it's just that I didn't sleep well last night. Let's go, the training session will begin soon." Marine 6 Styles, but very powerful and practical physical skills. Hina smiled and nodded. A group of freshmen quickly formed a neat square on the hot school field. After experiencing the baptism of the rigorous training of the military academy during this period, each of them has no longer the panic and greenness on their faces, but a calm and steady face. His eyes are firm and confident, his chest is straightened, and his body is straight like a javelin. This is the army. Perhaps life here is very hard and very tiring. But there is no doubt that this is the place that transforms a young man into a man. Zephyr looked at the uniform square in front of him with a full face of satisfaction, and nodded secretly in his heart. Although the freshmen in this class are not too prominent in their talents, at least each of them is working hard and serious enough. Especially as Roy gradually emerged, many other freshmen were inspired by him, but also secretly felt the pressure. At least as far as Zephyr knows, Roy is no longer the only one who wakes up at 4 in the morning to train himself. Many new students, including ghost spiders, moles, and smokers, proud little ghosts who originally had eyes above the top, have put aside the so-called arrogance in their hearts and demanded themselves with the strictest standards. This is a good trend. Zephyr is looking forward to one day. He can see with his own eyes, at the foot of the Sanctuary of Justice, Marineford. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Wanqian Marine practiced at the same time, like a magnificent scene of a dragon dancing. And the source of all this, it is estimated that no one would have thought that it was just an ordinary hot-blooded kid working silently. The corner of his mouth couldn't help showing a smile. His eyes quickly and solemnly swept across every young face in the recruits' square, and finally fell on Roy. "Very well, we don't have much time. Now we start to explain the essentials of Marine 6 Styles training." However, before starting to explain, the old man has an obligation to let everyone see the power of these 6 types with their own eyes. "Roy, get out," he suddenly said solemnly. The sound was loud like thunder that blew the entire school field. Roy looked like he had known this before, and stepped out of the queue with his chest raised. "Arrive." Zephyr laughed. "I believe that other students have also seen Roy's shave in the swordsmanship class. Now the old man uses him as the object to show you Marine 6 Styles." The freshman expressed no objection to this. Unconsciously, Roy, a young man who has no family background and is not outstanding in talent, has become a representative of this new year. Even more bizarre, the other freshmen did not feel any jealous and negative emotions towards this fact. Because everyone saw his almost crazy, desperate effort and self-discipline. They would only think that this kind of glory is well deserved for Roy's efforts and sweat. Then now, classmate Roy, use your full strength and unreservedly. Try to kill the old man. Zephyr's eyes suddenly cold, and his tone was severe. As soon as Zephyr's voice fell, all the freshmen present suddenly felt a terrifying killing intent, which turned into a whistling wind that swept across the school field. The killing intent was like a biting cold wind, which continuously penetrated into the deepest part of each of them, making them tremble all over and their legs weakened. It is conceivable that if it were not for the rigorous training of the military academy during this period, The will and strength of their rookies have been qualitatively changed and improved. It is estimated that the impact of this killing intent alone will be enough to make all of them incapacitated. Subconsciously, each of them looked at Zephyr, who was full of murderous aura and unscrupulously venting his aura, and his hands trembled involuntarily. Teacher Zephyr. Not kidding, he is serious. He wants to make Roy, with all his strength, kill him. What is going on? Roy stared solemnly at Zephyr in front of him, and the uneasy feeling in his heart that had been entangled for a long time became more obvious. He is Zephyr's murderous target, and the pressure on his body and will is countless times more terrifying than other new students. Ms. Zephyr, are you serious? He asked in a deep voice. Zephyr nodded solemnly. That's right, it's impossible to create a real combat effect just by rehearsal. And most importantly, the old man is also very curious now, how much strength do you hide? As soon as this statement came out, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Roy even hides his strength, he is already very strong. Each of them has seen Roy's terrifying amount of training with his own eyes, and thinks he can't compare with the latter at all. But when Zephyr said so, their eyes were filled with doubts. That is not Roy's full strength. Roy frowned. He didn't expect the heaven-defying practice techniques of 8 inner gates to be able to completely hide the old fritters like Zephyr. What he was entangled in his heart was how terrible the war predicted in his mind was that Zephyr couldn't help but use this method to force the freshmen of the military academy to grow up as soon as possible. But Zephyr has already spoken, and looking at his aura, it is clear that he will not easily let go himself. Actually, this thought flashed in Roy's mind, but a confident, cold smile gradually emerged from the corner of his mouth. To be honest, he is also looking forward to it. In that case, Teacher Zephyr, offended, talking. Roy's eyes condensed, and the ghosts of the figure flashed away in the same place. Without any footsteps, only the weird whistling sound of the dead moving through the air. One of Marine 6 styles, shave, so fast. The naked eye can't catch it at all. This kind of speed. Roy's shave is faster than before when he fought Momoshiki Vice Admiral in the swordsmanship class. The other military academy's eyes widened in an instant, trying to find Roy, but they all found nothing unexpectedly. The speed of shave is not something that ordinary human eyes can capture. They can see clearly, it's just that Roy's figure disappears as soon as his voice falls. The next moment he appeared behind Zephyr, strong wind. A fist pierced the yellow sand in the air that was raised by the wind. Good speed. Zephyr commented appreciatively, and the figure turned back unhurriedly, and the big hand moved softly out. This is a very strange picture. In the eyes of all the freshmen watching the game, Zephyr and Roy shot at the same time. But Roy is significantly faster, the weird thing is. Compared to Roy's swift punch, Zephyr reached out his hand. But it gives people an extremely slow feeling. Then, a strange scene was staged, like an inevitable fate. Roy's fist went straight to Zephyr's big hand. Then Zephyr grabbed his fist. Boom. There was a dull sound. The explosive power turned into a turbulent impact, blowing the white cloak of justice behind Zephyr hunting. Very good, do all the students see clearly? The one that Roy's student showed just now is one of Marine 6 style's shaves. Through stepping on the ground dozens of times in an instant, the reaction force of this high-speed stepping on the ground is used to achieve the effect of high-speed movement of the body. This move allows you to advance, retreat, and defend. It is extremely adaptable in actual combat. But the obvious weakness of this trick is that the way of shaving is linear, and the distance is quite limited. Therefore, when encountering an opponent with similar ability, you can predict the enemy's attack direction and position by using the old method just now. Of course, Zephyr smiled suddenly. If your speed is faster than his speed. Whoosh. The wind and sand raise a miniature spiral. In Roy's slightly surprised eyes, Zephyr in front of him disappeared. In actual combat, speed can largely determine the outcome of a life and death fight. A violent wind whirled and rose on the school field, rolling yellow sand on the ground, blurry vision. And Zephyr's figure, like a ghost, appeared vaguely in every random corner of the school field. Because of the many high-speed movements, the voices he uttered also appeared scattered from every direction in all directions, and the multiple repetitions even made this empty school field have a faint echo. The faster you are, the master will have the initiative to fight, and the master will have the rhythm of confrontation. The decisive factor for the outcome of the battle is not just a simple comparison of the strengths of the two parties, nor the variability of abilities, but whether you have the master's initiative in the battle and drag your opponent into your personal rhythm. Many people think that shaving is just a high-speed moving technique, so the old man can tell you clearly that those people are a group of frogs in the bottom of the well. The real strong person does not stick to the tricks themselves, but takes all their abilities, tricks, physical exertion and surrounding environmental factors into consideration. Then, Zephyr's voice suddenly stopped. The wind stopped suddenly. The yellow sand also seemed to freeze in the air. One hit kills. The voice appeared, by Roy's side. A heavy kick. Like a huge iron whip, it pierced the air straight, producing a strong blast, and slammed it at Roy's ribs. Everyone on the scene immediately held their breath, their complexion changed abruptly, and Chunin couldn't help but squeeze a sweat for Roy. Teacher Zephyr's attack, whether it was the timing, location, or speed, was almost perfect. With their self-deemed bad vision, they couldn't think of any way to crack Roy. The power of horror entangled this whip leg. Even if hockey was not displayed, its power was enough to easily kick a hill to pieces. Zephyr's eyes were filled with a strong sense of war, but the expression in his eyes was meaningful. Is it over? Is Roy going to lie down in the hospital for another week? Such a thought came to everyone's heart, but at this moment, they were shocked to discover, when Roy was facing a certain defeat, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up slightly. The arc became stronger and stronger, and in the end there was a sense of unscrupulousness. Changed. His eyes changed. A strong breath, like invisible gas, burst out of Roy's body quickly. Then, his steps lightly touched the ground. Huh. The figure flickered and disappeared suddenly. Boom. Zephyr's kick suddenly fell through. An extremely stunning arc light turned into a sharp slash, tearing the ground beneath its feet easily like a dragon. A huge crack spanning hundreds of meters stretched across the ground shockingly, and the new students were frightened. Tempest kick. They recognized it. This is Tempest kick, one of Marine 6 styles. Can create a powerful kicking technique similar to a swordsman's slash. Ha 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 ha. Zephyr's cheerful laughter sounded. He was not frustrated by his missed foot. Instead, he turned around with a smile on his face and looked at a young figure dozens of meters behind him, with a deep smile. Smoke and steam, like a substance, emerged from the surface of the boy's body. Smelly boy, you really belong to you. Zephyr smiled and said to Roy, with undisguised admiration and appreciation in his eyes. Roy smiled easily, shook his head and said, Ms. Zephyr, you were almost killed. You really don't love your students. However, I don't want to go back to the military hospital again to lie down for a week. Everyone watched this scene in shock, the old and the young who joked casually. Far away, similar serious expression, capable and calm temperament. It's like a pair of biological father and son who are practicing against each other. Zephyr heard Roy's joke, smiled slowly and said, After all, the young eagle will have a day of growth and soaring in the air. The enemies you will face in the future are far stronger, more ruthless, and cruel than the old man. If you don't have this kind of mental preparation, the old man still suggests that you pack up your belongings and go home to plow the fields. Roy narrowed his eyes and laughed wildly. Yes. Although I don't know when, but the war will begin. But, what's different from before is, Teacher Zephyr. This time I am ready. I am no longer that fragile kid. Maybe I still have a long distance from those real monsters. But I am not afraid. He twisted his neck, grinned, and stepped out. In the eyes of everyone who was so shocked, the skin on the surface of the body gradually appeared a strange blood red. What is that? In the distance of the schoolyard, two tall figures stood side by side, looking at the two figures facing each other in the center of the schoolyard. One of them murmured suspiciously. It is estimated that it is some kind of tactics to increase combat power by stimulating the potential of the body. I just don't know the specific effect. The other person stretched lazily, as if he had just woke up. Aokiji Kuzan, Vice Admiral of the headquarters. Momosagi, who had just murmured, frowned. She always felt that Roy was a bit too hard. Guion, not everyone can practice smoothly. Kuzan seemed to perceive the fluctuations in Guion's heart, and suddenly said. Guion was silent and nodded. Kuzan smiled and shook his head. He had never seen Guion express such strong curiosity and concern for a man. Perhaps it was moved by the determination of that young man? Or maybe it's the boy who feels distressed. He didn't know and didn't care. He was simply curious about how far the junior boy who was valued by Teacher Zephyr could go. The time and military affairs of the headquarters were too boring for Kuzan. The appearance of such an interesting young man has become a topic that Kuzan occasionally pays attention to. Are we going to stop it? Guion next to him suddenly asked. Kuzan laughed. If we make a move, Teacher Zephyr will probably be angry. Furthermore, don't you want to see with your own eyes how strong our junior brother is? Guion bit her red lip. Her eyes quietly looked at the figure on the school field, and she subconsciously took a sip from the thermos in her hand. Hot water? Kuzan said curiously. Guion stunned, then smiled softly. Well, drinking hot water is good for your body, so you should drink some of it usually. Kuzan hurriedly waved his hand and said, that doesn't suit me. The dark red light, like a bloody moist, quickly emerged from the surface of Roy's skin. Under the stunned eyes of everyone, Roy took a deep breath. At this moment, his temperament gradually changed dramatically. It seems to have gradually evolved from an ordinary human to a roaring king in the depths of the jungle, wild and domineering. Your mindset has changed. In my mind, the voice of the system sounded abruptly. Yes? Roy's mouth curled up slightly, and he secretly said in his heart. Yes, if you were before, even with my help, you still rejected this process of strengthening and polishing in your heart, but now you seem to have become another person. The system's voice is still indifferent, but Roy can hear the relief. Perhaps it is. All I know is that since I have put in so much effort, I can't come here in vain. Roy said in his heart. The system said indifferently. A powerful force will give people the confidence to face everything. Especially when this kind of power is obtained by your unremitting efforts and self-discipline. Perhaps you don't want to admit it, but you also understand that you are no longer the slacker who used to eat and wait to die. The yellow sand rushed towards his face, and Zephyr was getting more and more vigorous, and the pressure on people became more and more terrifying. The gazes of the freshmen were staring at Roy tightly, holding their breath, not daring to blink. The world is terribly quiet. Roy can even clearly hear the sound of his heart beating faster and blood rushing through his blood vessels. A gentle smile hung from the corner of his mouth. Perhaps, but I am right. If I hadn't crossed, my life might be just like what the old man Zephyr said before, mediocre, without any characteristics, but stable enough. That kind of life is not wrong, nor is it sinful. Different people have different pursuits. Really? The system's voice was rather unexpected. Yes, the era of peace built by the ancestors with countless hard work and lives, isn't it just for ordinary people like us to live a mediocre and stable life? Roy laughed self-deprecatingly. Their dedication and bloody battle is to enable most people to live such a decadent life. Living in an ordinary way ends in an ordinary way. The system said. But what about now? Now. Roy exhaled the deep breath. His eyes shined brightly, as if crossing the schoolyard in front of him, past Zephyr in front of him, and looked towards the endless sea in the distance. Now, maybe I want to see the world with my own eyes. He clenched his fists and started to move forward. With every step he took, his figure seemed to become taller and brighter. When he walked to the very center of the school, under the entanglement of countless yellow sands. The rushing green energy airflow wrapped around his whole body, the blood-red skin bulged piece by piece, and his eyes were full of unyielding perseverance. Like a tiger coming out of the cage. 8 inner gates, the third gate, opened the door. An unprecedented powerful force, like a turbulent flood, roared frantically from every cell, every muscle, every blood vessel, and every acupuncture point in the body. The vigorous, lush green airwave, like a substantial hurricane, rises around Roy's body. He twisted his neck and let out a soft breath. That breath, like smoke, condensed in the air in front of him, like a white flag. The pupils of Zephyr's eyes shrank suddenly. This momentum is quite good. Then. Teacher Zephyr, come on. Roy raised his head abruptly, his eyes bursting with blood-red light. The energy wave on his body suddenly became surging and surging, and the ground under his feet even cracked inch by inch under the impact of this wave of air. Very good, a trick I have never seen before. Zephyr's eyes condensed, and suddenly he burst into laughter. The moment the voice fell, he kicked it out in the void. Huh. A dazzling light blue slashing airwaves suddenly screamed from his toes, tearing the ground all the way and whizzing towards Roy. At the same time, Zephyr was not busy explaining to the other freshmen who were dumbfounded. Tempest Kick, one of Marine 6 styles, uses the rapid contraction and extension of powerful leg muscles to get out of the leg at a very fast speed in an instant. As long as the speed of your legs can surpass the speed of sound, you can compress the air in front of your legs powerfully and roll up the vacuum to create a shock wave that is extremely sharp and comparable to a swordsman's slash. Such a trick is to strike at the enemy from a long distance. At the same time, an excellent temptation to face enemies with unknown capabilities. His vivid explanation here is actually releasing water to Roy to some extent. The blast of air is getting closer and closer, and it rushes at an alarming speed. Even at the moment Zephyr shot, Roy could clearly feel the sharpness of the slashing edge. The gust of wind screamed, causing pain in his cheeks. But he laughed more and more crazy. This powerful sense of oppression, this fatal sense of crisis, unexpectedly caused a strong excitement in his heart unconsciously. Next moment, he moved. A loud noise erupted from the ground under my feet. As the soil flies, a small pit appeared at Roy's feet. Facing this tempest kick by Zephyr, he actually rushed straight forward. This is not shaved. This is purely ultimate speed and explosive power. Everyone was dumbfounded, their fists clenched tightly. Then, an extremely terrifying scene was staged. Facing the slashing shockwave powerful enough to cut through the large battleship, Roy rushed forward like a beast and twisted his body strangely in the air. Under the terrible forward kinetic energy propelling force, that slashing arc was actually sticking to his body and passing him. The distance was so close that even the Yu-Wei who slashed the airwave left a shallow bruise on the surface of his chest. The military uniform tore to pieces in the sky in the blink of an eye. Bloody time. Tempest Kick's slash also fell on the ground, and there was an earth-shattering loud noise. The mud flew up on the school field, and the messy rubble was blowing in the squally gust of wind. Everyone couldn't help but narrowed their eyes, raising their arms to cover the oncoming rubble. So strong body control ability. This kind of neural response control, is it the return of life? In the distance of the schoolyard, Momoshagi and Aokiji, who were silently observing the battle, flashed this idea in their minds. But the next moment, they shook their heads subconsciously. It cannot be the return of life. When life is returned, you can freely control your body, hair, and internal organs. As long as your consciousness is poured in, you can freely control any place. This ability is very powerful, especially for masters of physical skills. This ability to freely control various parts of the body will give closer physical skills stronger adaptability and responsiveness. However, the display of life return requires all Marine 6 styles to be proficient in master. But Roy can only perform a shave. Now, it is impossible to achieve this. In this way, after long-term extreme training, has the brain's control and development of the body reached a near-perfect level? Kuzan muttered to himself. The Momoshagi beside him was also full of surprises, with bright lights in his eyes. Ha 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 ha. Good job. Zephyr burst into laughter. Aokiji and Momoshagi both hurriedly looked. Everyone looked at the school field attentively. I saw a green light, shot through the tumbling rocks and dust at an astonishing speed. Like a roaring beast, run to Zephyr recklessly. Fist, like a violent storm, blasted out little by little. The momentum is like a broken bamboo. The fist blasted toward Zephyr like a violent storm, and the dense green airwave looked like thousands of fireflies dancing in the void from a distance. Very good speed and explosive power. Zephyr commented in admiration, and a touch of relief emerged in his heart. Roy's speed and strength will never lose to some elite CP9 members. If he can succeed the rest of Marine 6 styles and even hockey. Zephyr's eyes suddenly flashed with brilliance, and after so much effort, is it finally about to bear fruit? As the voice said, the hot wind swarmed. I'm optimistic about the brats. Facing the opponent's intensive, high-speed, and explosive offensive, Marine 6 styles has one of its tricks that can be solved very well. Zephyr shouted. That burly body like a mountain suddenly changed incomparably strange. His figure seemed to suddenly become paper. In that stormy offensive, like catkins fluttering in the wind, they swayed slightly, as if they could not see the actual shape. Failed. 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 Every punch of Roy, punch after punch with powerful explosive power. They all rubbed Zephyr's soft body weirdly, all of them fell through, even the latter's military uniform could not be touched. One of Marine 6 styles, paper arts. Did you see it? This is one of Marine 6 styles' defensive skills. By unloading the power of the whole body, you are committed to the changes in the airflow generated by the opponent's actions. Attacks towards yourself can all be avoided at the very moment. Zephyr's voice had something meaningful. This kind of defense and avoidance skills is very demanding of your control of body functions and muscles, and it also requires strong airflow and energy perception. This is a very difficult trick for the master, and even many vice admiral in the headquarters are difficult to practice successfully. The essential reason is that they have not been able to control their bodies to the ultimate. Others not only watched fascinated they were also stunned to hear. But Zephyr's voice fell in Roy's mind, but it exploded like thunder. He suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, Zephyr in front of him suddenly disappeared. When the next moment appears, he has been infinitely close in front of him. Even the vicissitudes of face wearing sunglasses is less than half a meter away from him. Then, brat, let the old man give you a little pressure. Don't die. A deep voice came from his ear, causing Roy's face to suddenly change slightly. He saw Zephyr raise an index finger. The fingers covered with thick calluses because of years of training fell in Roy's eyes at this moment, but they were far more terrifying than a sharp sword. Because this is finger pistol. By gathering the power of the whole body on the index finger, it releases a blow between the hardened fingers and flint. Zephyr's smiling voice sounded on the school field. Everyone present suddenly stopped breathing, this distance. Zephyr's actions have given them the most realistic and vivid display of these freshmen. Finger pistol. Only under this distance can it explode its greatest power. The fingertips of those fingers have bullet-like attack power, which can easily penetrate human bodies and even steal attacks. How can Roy deal with it? They couldn't imagine it in their minds. With the explosive power of Teacher Zephyr, this finger pistol, not to mention the steel plate in the human body, is probably an armed steel heavy artillery. It will instantly turn to ashes under the power of this finger. An unspeakable sense of horror and crisis surged in an instant. Roy, who opened the third gate of 8 inner gates, has a lot more perception than before. Facing Zephyr's index finger, he only felt the pores all over his body suddenly exploded at this moment. That feeling was as if a sharp blade was slashing against his spine, causing people's hair to explode, and goosebumps rolled up one after another. A piercing chill gushes from the soles of his feet and goes straight to the deepest part of the soul. In the melee fighting, the most dangerous thing is not Tempest Kick's long-range, large-scale killing tricks. It's an explosive technique at super close range. Tempest Kick can't kill people, but Finger Pistol can. No mortal fetus can block the penetration of Finger Pistol. At least until armament hockey is cultivated, absolutely not. So, don't let me down, brat. Think about it, what exactly did the old man teach you? Or, what have you learned? Such a thought flashed in Zephyr's heart, and the index finger in his hand suddenly pierced out. Like a gust of wind, like a phantom, strong wind. Heavy rain. Everyone stared at this scene intently. Next moment, Zephyr burst out laughing. The freshmen cried out in horror. Aokiji and Momosagi in the distance of the schoolyard smiled and shook their heads with emotion. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. The shadow of death, as the chill gushes out frantically. At this moment, Roy's brain started to work quickly. Hard resistance. Impossible. If it is hard resistance, even if you make appropriate defensive actions in time, you will only end up with a bruised end in the end. Use a shave to spread the distance. Nor does it work. He simply rejected this idea in his mind. With the speed of shaving by oneself, it is impossible to open a safe distance in such a short period of time. So, what else can you do? A way to resist high density, high burst, and high precision offensives within a short distance. The moment this thought appeared, suddenly an aura flashed across Roy's brain, exploding like thunder. He suddenly opened his eyes. Finger pistol chaos outbreak. Dense gun shadows flashed quickly in the void, and the explosion of air being penetrated was like the explosion of a machine gun. Just when each of them thought that Roy was about to end here, everyone saw a shocking scene. Roy's figure seemed to have given up all resistance at this time. The enthusiastic posture that had stood upright suddenly shrank, and the figure seemed to become a wobbly piece of paper, fluttering gently. He closed his eyes. Then all of Zephyr's attacks failed. Ha 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 ha. You really didn't let the old man down. Zephyr let out a hearty laugh, and the finger pistol pierced out of his hand faster and faster, faster and faster, and the others in the court couldn't see any of his movements at all. As his speed increased, the explosiveness and sharp sound of the air in front of him also became more and more rush, more and more frightening. But an even stranger scene happened. No matter how Zephyr speeds up his movements, Roy's figure is so sluggish, even giving people a feeling of leisurely pleasure. This is a picture with strong contrast enough to make people vomit blood. Roy's figure swings very slowly, so slow that anyone can clearly see the movement of every muscle on his body. Zephyr's stab speed was so fast that countless afterimages appeared in the void. But Teacher Zephyr's attack, but he couldn't touch Roy at all. This is paper arts. Roy actually watched it once and became the master. Paper arts, one of Marine 6 styles. How can this be? Paper arts training is notoriously difficult among Marine 6 styles. Even some of the vice admiral in this department have not been able to master this trick proficiently. The freshmen suddenly burst into shocking exclamations. Smoker, Mole, Ghost Spider and others stared at the scene of this battle with incredible faces, clenching their fists subconsciously. Far away from the school field. What an unexpected performance. Aokiji smiled and unconsciously moved the blindfold on his forehead with his hands. He really didn't expect that Roy could become a master of paper arts so soon. Perhaps this has something to do with his tricks to break through the limits of the human body and the advantage of a perfect master's body, but the progress is indeed a bit scary. Although in comparison, when the 3 of them were learning the 6 forms, all the 6 forms skills were learned at a glance. But this is not the same. They are all monsters among geniuses, and Aokiji does not deny this. But Roy is different. His talent is far from being a genius, let alone on par with the 3 of them. Is it pure luck, or is it the result of hard work? Aokiji couldn't help thinking about it with interest. Only if you work hard enough can you have luck. At this moment, Momoshagi on the side suddenly said solemnly. Aokiji could hear excitement and joy in her tone. What's wrong, Gion? Do you also believe in luck? I thought you didn't believe it. Aokiji ridiculed rarely. Momoshagi smiled and said, geniuses don't need luck, but ordinary people are different. But I don't think that Roy's performance is luck. For him, luck is nothing more than the result of hard work and success in the end. At least, he doesn't believe in luck. Maybe teacher Zephyr also realized this and chose to use such a risky way to test him and even challenge his limits. Kuzan, you are right, not everyone has such superior talents and conditions as ours. But there are always people who refuse to admit defeat. The two looked at each other, then both fell silent, again looking at the figure of the young man. Yes, what I take for granted, including this, learn Marine 6 styles at a glance. Perhaps it is the great achievement that other people have risked their lives and exchanged countless efforts. Talent has high and low, but hard work is worthy of respect. But our teacher Zephyr, it's not easy to recruit. Aokiji smiled suddenly. Yes, Heimu. Although Roy's progress was so fast that even Aokiji and Momoshagi both had a stunning sigh in their hearts, Roy still has a long distance from their level. And it is obvious that Zephyr's so-called Marine 6 Styles demonstration class, to a certain extent, is not only to explain to a group of military school freshmen, but also to mention Roy. If they want to end the battle, based on their knowledge of teacher Zephyr, it is estimated that Roy will be solved in an instant, there is no doubt. This is the usual method Zephyr uses to deal with geniuses and monsters. When Aokiji, Akainu, and Kizaru were in the military academy, teacher Zephyr often used a powerful crushing advantage to instantly defeat them in order to avoid them being overly arrogant because of their powerful talents. This bitterness, especially the guy Paluzolino, ate a lot back then. This is the reason why Zephyr is able to train so many outstanding students. His teaching characteristics and methods are not static, but will change specifically for each student's talents, personality characteristics, strengths and weaknesses. Will Roy be proud and arrogant? Impossible. He knew better than anyone how bad his talent was, so he worked so hard. The last thing he needs is to understand the gap between himself and the top admiral powerhouses. Because he knows better than anyone. In the scene before him, it was obvious that teacher Zephyr was feeding Roy. Let him be able to master the Master Marine 6 styles as quickly and as possible. Ms. Zephyr is always like this, isn't it? He spares no effort to give everything for his students. Momoshagi smiled softly, without concealing his respect and admiration for Zephyr in his tone. They all know the tragedy that happened to Zephyr very well. Also really clear, the old man over 100 years old crawled out of that nightmare shadow, renewed his courage to shoulder his own beliefs. What courage is needed? Very well, did everyone see it? The key to master paper arts is not your visual ability. You have to be aware of the fact that sight, hearing, and even your 5 senses, in the real fight between life and death, will greatly disturb your perception. Zephyr calmly launched a staggering offensive towards Roy in front of him, and explained with a smile. He is not a person who likes to use books to explain all knowledge. In the past, he didn't have so much red tape on the way to become stronger. He is able to stand in the position he is today, relying on the fame of One Punch and One Punch. All his understanding of combat comes from the display, so he also believes that only in real combat, a person's understanding of combat skills can reach the most thorough level. Feel it with your heart. Every punch, every attack, and every sword swung by the enemy is traceable. No matter how fast he is, as long as you don't be dragged into his rhythm by your opponent, you can be invincible. His speed was getting faster and faster, and even the afterimages in the void gradually disappeared. But in the eyes of everyone, the boy with naked torso and full of blood still closed his eyes tightly, slowly dodged the oncoming deadly attack. This impactful picture gave them all a great shock, and also clearly presented all the mysteries of Marine 6 styles before their eyes. Finally, Roy suddenly opened his eyes, his aura changed again. If he was a lazy and slow sloth just now, then he now turned into an agile leopard in the blink of an eye. There seems to be a ghost flashing in the void. That's Roy's action. An afterimage appeared. I saw Roy emerge from the sluggish state of action, and his figure was suddenly short, avoiding teacher Zephyr with at least 5 finger pistol shots. Twist your feet and kick the ground. Precariously move forward. Zephyr's eyes were instantly stained with a touch of surprise. This is a game technique. Combination of shave and paper arts in Marine 6 styles. With the evasion skills of paper arts while advancing at high speeds, it seems that Roy's development level of physical control is much higher than he thought. What kind of exercise is he practicing? But before he thought about it, a pair of cold eyes appeared in front of him. That's the look in Roy's eyes. Calmness and restraint can be filled with unrelenting determination. His speed has become faster. A more vigorous green wave roared on him, and finally it gradually turned into blue. Thank you, Teacher Zephyr. I'm stronger. Roy's voice sounded low and hoarse. His figure disappeared again. Short. Punch. The bursting white waves of air spiraled behind him. Zephyr's eyes condensed. Iron body. Boom. The fist slammed into his abdomen. Next moment, Zephyr's figure flew upside down like a cannonball. It's Marineford at 4 o'clock in the morning again. 1001, 1002. Boom. Along with a low muffled sound, Roy, sweating profusely, with his hands and feet twitching slightly, lay on his stomach, gasping for breath. 2 days have passed since the actual combat training session of Marine 6 Styles. Although he was considered a prestige in front of everyone, and in the end he even slapped the old man Zephyr out, but that punch failed to have any effect on Zephyr, who used the iron body. The iron body of Marine 6 Styles, defensive skills, invigorates a well-trained body to make it hard like iron. Even ordinary bullets and knives can't break it. The disadvantage is that it cannot move freely when using the iron body. Then there is no more. That was his strongest punch. After that punch, Roy retreated from the state of 8 inner gates and the 3rd gate, completely losing all combat effectiveness. Zephyr crawled out of a huge sinkhole with a grin and cursing as if he was okay, and then showed everyone the rest of the 6 skills and training methods, and hurriedly ended the training class, hurriedly ran to the military headquarters. Roy, who was lying on the ground, was panting. He didn't care too much about the mud stuck to his face and body, but calmly felt that his chaotic breathing became steady, and then he enjoyed the cold breeze from the sea with a full face. He raised his hand subconsciously, looked at his palm full of calluses and wounds, and suddenly couldn't help laughing. He clenched his fist. I really got stronger. He found that he really liked this kind of practical feeling more and more. Bit by bit progress, everything seems very peaceful. But only he himself knows, he is clearly moving towards his goal. The wind is blowing the hairtips wet with sweat. The stars are shining in the dark night. In front and in the distance are the sweat and footprints left by my long-distance running with weight. Every bit in this schoolyard is very familiar to me. He suddenly remembered himself before, changed myself on Earth. Maybe this time, he's still holding his cell phone and watching the live broadcast, right? Thinking like this, Roy's face couldn't help showing a self-deprecating smile. At the age of 20, young people always like to despise time. The most valuable thing about them is time, but what they don't cherish the most is time. But what they don't know is, that was actually the most precious moment in their lives. Will you miss your time on Earth? The voice of the system rang in my mind abruptly. Roy has become accustomed to this guy's sudden greeting, just smiled slightly, and subconsciously said, of course. His eyes were in a daze, as if thinking of something. His eyes became softer. I will miss the warmth of lying on the sofa late at night and watching the drama under the quilt. I will miss the excitement of running to the roadside supper with my friends on weekends, drinking and drinking. I will also miss the time when I don't do anything, just lie on the balcony and basking in the sun. He laughed happily. Yes, that time was really good. The system is silent. Do you want to go back? Roy suddenly laughed and said, what's wrong? Can you let me go back? The system's answer is as usual. No, I just asked casually. Roy flipped a Byakugan and curled his lips. You can't just don't tease me, asshole. The system slowly said, but I always feel that even if you can go back, you won't go back. Roy was taken aback. Go back? This is really a very distant word. He couldn't help but fall into contemplation. If there is a chance, will I really go back? The cold moonlight swayed down little by little, and accompanied by the bright sky full of stars shining brightly above his head. Roy suddenly laughed again. I will go back, but not now. Where to go back? A cold female voice rang from her side with a curious tone. Roy heard the sound, his heart jumped, and subconsciously raised his head to look. A pair of super long legs that can be played for a lifetime comes into view. On the snow-white thigh, the colorful Madara spider tattoo is full of the breath of Oni-san. Roy feels a little hot in his nose. This angle. He is lying down, so his eyes are full of long legs. It's nothing, I just said go home. Roy's expression pretended to be plain and plain. It was cold late at night, but Momoshagi still wore that charming and alluring short skirt as always. Behind him was wearing a cloak of justice representing the rank of vice admiral. The black hair was tied at the back of his head casually, looking very cool. Your hometown seems to be in East Blue. Momoshagi didn't notice the strangeness in Roy's tone, and just asked indifferently. Your hometown. Seems to be in East Blue. East Blue, recognized as the weakest of the 4 seas outside of the Grand Line. Momoshagi pretended to be casually holding his chest with both hands, and asked in an unsalty and undiminished voice. Roy was stunned when he heard Momosagi's question. How does Momoshagi know that her so-called birthplace is in East Blue? But to be honest, he didn't have too deep memories of the sea area where Roger, the One Piece King, appeared, let alone his hometown. There is one and only one in his hometown, and that is the peaceful and stable country on Earth. Well, it is. Roy replied with a wink, avoiding weight. He raised his hand and wiped the dirt and dust on his face, and shook his sweat-drenched hair carelessly. Momoshagi frowned, as if not satisfied with Roy's answer, and continued to ask. Listening to what you said to yourself just now, do you want to go home? The existence of the system is a secret, and it is even more incomprehensible to her, so she subconsciously thinks that Roy just now was just talking to herself. Sitting on the ground, Roy raised his head, staring quietly at the bright starry sky in the dark, and smiled. Go home. Who doesn't want to? He faced the sky on his back, as if the cold sea breeze could blow away the memories in his heart. Momoshagi lowered his head and looked a little dazed for a while. From her perspective, Roy's full face can be clearly seen. The face covered with sweat and mud, compared to the profile face that used to read the night at night, was a bit less immature and bookish, and a bit more mature and fortitude. Your method of breaking through the limits of your body is too dangerous. She bit her red lips suddenly. Roy smiled. Momoshagi Vice Admiral. Tell me, where is this sea that is not dangerous? Momoshagi was stunned, and subconsciously said. Marineford is safe. Roy smiled more deeply. Yes. But these days, the frequent and excessive military mobilization of the headquarters does not mean that. Momosagi's pupils suddenly contracted slightly. This guy is so sharp. But the next moment she was keenly aware of Roy's narrow gaze. This kid is blowing her up. It seems that my judgment is not wrong, and the war is about to start. Roy sighed suddenly, and said in a deep voice. Momoshagi was silent. She didn't expect that this self-disciplined junior brother, apart from his perseverance and positivity, was also so meticulous in his heart. Yes, the war is about to start. As early as a day ago. Marineford received information from New World. Golden Lion led at least hundreds of heavy-armed pirate regiment fleets, starting from New World, and the target direction was Naval Headquarters Marineford. On the day when the news was received, the Naval Headquarters Marshal Kong issued the highest-level military martial law, and gathered the elites of the nearby marine branches back to the headquarters to prepare for the battle. In order to block the news, the high-level officials of the ministry unanimously decided to keep confidential the news about the upcoming war to avoid causing large-scale panic. Naval Headquarters Marineford is more than just a military station. There are a large number of residential areas in Marineford, where there are countless families of Marine soldiers and generals, including cadets. If news leaks rashly, it is likely to cause great panic among civilians. I just didn't expect. Roy, a military academy student who is immersed in training and learning, was able to detect anomalies from all kinds of clues. Can you tell me, Momoshagi Vice Admiral, who is the enemy of this war? Roy moved his gaze to Momoshagi and asked seriously. Momoshagi groaned. At this moment Roy pointed to his military uniform suddenly. I am also a Marine. Even if I am a reserve player, I am also a Marine. The tone is solemn and serious. He wants to know where exactly is the problem. Even if the war really breaks out, he must learn enough intelligence to ensure safety. Momoshagi looked at Roy's serious eyes and slowly said. Golden Lion Shiki, Flying Pirate Group. Roy thought it was him. No wonder Sengoku Admiral went to the military academy a few days ago to teach them a military strategy class, explaining in detail the details of the battle between Marine and the Flying Pirates. However, Golden Lion attacked Naval Headquarters again. This is completely out of touch with the original plot. Seeing Roy's solemn look, Momoshagi couldn't help but speak. You don't need to worry so much. Military academies belong to the reserve service in the army setting and are not in the ranks of the regular army. In other words, you do not need to participate in the war. This war is not yet a stage for you to shine. You will be arranged to hide in the rear, and the headquarters will set aside a part of the regular army to protect you. Saying boom. A deafening explosion sounded in the distance, followed by hot artillery fire. Momoshagi was stunned, his face changed drastically and turned to look. Roy sighed. Hide? Where to hide? He stood up slowly, tightening the collar of his uniform, his eyes deep and composed. The explosion point was decorated in an ordnance in the military academy. The war has begun. Their first goal is the military school. This also means that there is nowhere to hide. Damn Golden Lion. The first target of the bombing turned out to be the military academy. This lunatic. In the office of Marshall Naval Headquarters Marineford, Marshal Sora furiously slammed his fist on the desk, and the force of terror directly smashed the marble-made desk to pieces. Sora stared fiercely at the fire from the military academy's position in the distance outside the window. The hideous blue veins on his forehead protruded and his face was covered with haze. He was trying his best to conceal the rushing anger in his heart. Naval Headquarters Marineford is a very large island. In addition to the area where the major military units are stationed, there is also a large number of civilian living areas in the rear. The Marine Academy is also within the scope of the civilian living area. Facing this cruel war that is doomed, facing the ambitious revenge of Golden Lion, Marine Marshal Kong, as Marine's first commander, was already prepared. Not only did he mobilize enough manpower and Marine elites from other major branches, he even sent a full 20 Buster Call-class heavy warships stationed in the waters near Eni's lobby back to their headquarters. It's just that what he never expected was, the cunning fellow Golden Lion, a target of military bombing, turned out to be the military academy of the headquarters. Marine Academy is the cradle of justice, where excellent future Marine generals are cultivated. Anyone is an immeasurable asset of Marine. The most important is, this shot also means that the attack of Golden Lion this time will destroy everything at all costs. Both civilians and military academies are in the slaughter range of the flying pirates. Before Kong had recovered from his anger, the military phone bug in front of him made waves of calls in a panic. Report to Marshal Kong. There was an unidentified bombardment that landed from the sky in the front port of the headquarters. More than 10 warships have been sunk near the marine port. Report Marshal Kong. This is the civilian area of headquarters A1. We have seen a lot of artillery attacks on our side. We are asking for support. Boom. A series of explosions continued to be heard in the military phone worm, followed by the painful screams and wailing of Marine and civilians, and finally the terrifying signal interruption. Report the Marshal. This is the B2 Military Reserve Area. A large number of artillery attacks have also occurred here. The location and number of enemies are unknown. Red emergency signals spread from the military phone worms of various units Unicom, which made Kong, who had always been resourceful and calm, couldn't help feeling flustered and unexpected. The speed, scale, and execution of the flying pirates are too terrifying. From the first sound of artillery fire from the military academy to the present, signals for help have appeared in various locations throughout Marineford, but it took less than 10 seconds. This wide range of firepower coverage makes Naval Headquarters' original deployment of heavy troops in the front of Marineford Naval Port, which suddenly becomes useless. After all, I despised the Golden Lion guy. Such a thought flashed in Kong's mind, but it was quickly suppressed by him in an instant. He simply shook his head. Now is not the time to hesitate and regret. If the Golden Lion is allowed to make noise again like this, I am afraid that the entire Naval Headquarters will be completely collapsed before Marine's large forces have taken action. You must stabilize the military's mind as soon as possible and find the position of the Golden Lion. Kong deserves to be the highest person in charge of justice, but he even worked out a corresponding strategy after a few breaths. He quickly picked up the military phone worm in front of him, commanded each unit, and methodically issued military orders one after another. Garp, you are responsible for finding the location of Golden Lion and preventing him from moving as much as possible. Sengoku, the troops in the front of the military port of the headquarters will be handed over to you. If necessary, the fleet can be moved out to give priority to protecting the safety of civilian areas. Kuzan, Sakazuki, you too follow the Sengoku operation. You must never let the Golden Lion fleet break into the civilian area. Zephyr, the military academy will leave it to you. Perusalino, you have only one mission. Use your Devil Fruit ability to sink the main battleship of the flying pirates from the sky as much as possible. A series of military orders were quickly issued, and Kong crushed the military phone worm in his hand. Almost all mountains and plains outside the window are full of flames of war. Scalp-numbing explosions roared from all directions in Marineford. Among them were Hez's grinning laughter and the howls of civilians. The holy place of justice that was supposed to sleep peacefully in the night, but in a few moments it became a fierce battlefield burned by war. Kong gritted his teeth, and he could see the pirate boats descending towards Marineford's ground among the smoke-filled clouds, and he could even clearly see the grinning face of the deck pirates. He must take action. But just when he put on his cloak and was about to go out, a hoarse and low voice, like Yi Xiao's voice, came from the balcony with a sneer. What's wrong, empty? Does old friends plan to get together with me when they come? The moment he heard this voice, Kong's face suddenly changed. Rumble. The dull sound of cannons faintly came from the black sky above the head, as if gestating an astonishing thunderstorm. The pouring of artillery made the dark clouds emit light and dark, and the shadow of the dense pirate fleet behind the clouds could be vaguely seen. Boundless shadows quickly enveloped the entire naval headquarters Marineford in the cannonballs falling from the sky. This is the biggest humiliation ever encountered in Marine's history. There was a disgusting, bloody smell in the air from afar, mixed with the smell of gunpowder, and it poured into everyone's mouth and nose. The war has really begun. Boom! Suddenly a shell plunged into the ground at an alarming speed, exploding a terrifying flame not far from the school grounds. The billowing smoke gathered into a black fuzzy cloud and rose quickly, lingering for a long time. Momosagi's face was so dignified that he put away the military phone worm that had just sent the command signal in his hand, and looked back at Roy. "Hurry up and hide." When she saw Roy stunned in place like a sculpture, a wave of anger surged in her heart, and she yelled anxiously. Then she was stunned. I saw the flames everywhere in the background. Roy's figure glowed with heavy shadows, flashing erratic shadows on the shaking ground. His handsome face full of lines, also looked like a knife cut in the pulsating firelight, resolute and stern. The corners of Roy's mouth slowly conjured a mocking arc, and the voice was filled with sourness. "Hide? Where can I hide?" He raised his hand, pointed at the sky above his head, and let out a long breath. "If I'm not mistaken, the Golden Lion fleet has begun to cover Marineford's full range of artillery. But their artillery fire is not enough. I believe this is just the beginning trick. After a long time, their ammunition will be exhausted. Then the troops of the flying pirates will be dropped into the civilian area of the headquarters on a large scale." Roy's tone was filled with confidence and determination. Golden Lion Shiki. This guy has a very cunning character, and he is good at large-scale military operations. Sangoku Admiral analyzed this very clearly with us in the theory class. The most important thing is that Golden Lion once broke into Marineford solo. That is to say, he knows the distribution of military and civilian forces within Marineford more clearly than other pirates. He knows that on the frontal battlefield, the flying pirate group he leads is definitely not an opponent of naval headquarters. To be honest, if you are fighting head-on, there is no pirate group in this sea that is Marine's opponent. So, he adopted the strategy of bombing and dividing troops to invade civilian areas. In this way, he will be able to completely separate the combat power of the headquarters, so that Marine's force has to be divided mostly to protect civilian areas. Roy's voice was calm and indifferent, his eyes gleaming with wisdom. Momosagi on the side was trembling with emotion, and his eyes widened uncontrollably. She did not expect that at Roy's age, she would have such meticulous logic and thinking ability in military strategy. Is he a military command genius? Do not. Momosagi shook his head slightly subconsciously. Because the starry night suddenly flashed in her mind. Under the light in front of the window, there was a young figure dressed in the moonlight, reading at night. Yes, not everything you have learned, all the hard work you put in. Maybe they will not play the role it should have in the moment of effort. Because everyone cannot see the future from now. But what you have to believe is, those you wake up early that others cannot get up. Those books that you can't read with your patience. Someday, those bits and pieces will be connected in a wonderful way in your future life. You have to believe in something: courage, destiny, life, hard work, because these bits can connect your life all the way and bring you self-confidence from the source. It will make you far away from the ordinary and become different. Just like the boy in front of me. Even in the face of a catastrophic war like a huge change, he can analyze and respond calmly. So Momosagi Vice Admiral, Marineford has no safe place anymore. Roy smiled flatly, his eyes exuding unparalleled determination. I can't hide either. This is not just a war for the regular army, it is also a war for all of us. Go ahead, Momosagi Vice Admiral. I also have places I have to go. After that, Roy is taking a step forward. He started to run. The speed is getting faster and faster. Everything around is familiar to him. They are all places where he goes through long-distance running, training and class every day. It's just that blood and fire are everywhere in this place that should be full of tranquility and peace. Momosagi, who stayed in place, stared blankly at the young figure who had plunged into the distance with beautiful eyes, and fell silent for a while. That unrequited back figure seems to be able to give others great encouragement and courage. She had never seen such a person. Self-discipline, hard work, fearlessness, and courage. It seems that all beautiful adjectives are extremely suitable for him, and there is no blunt feeling. But he is still very young. Momosagi really wants to know what kind of place it is that can give birth to such an excellent man. Yes, the word Momosagi uses to describe Roy here is man, not schooler, let alone juvenile. Whether a man has nothing to do with age and experience. It is whether he bravely shoulders the responsibility that belongs to him. Without hesitation, without retreat. to shoulder the expectations of others. She knows where Roy is going. She also knew what a dangerous crisis and what a powerful and cruel enemy Roy would face. But she just couldn't say any reason to dissuade him, and she didn't dare to stop him forcefully. Is there any reason to stop a man from running into his own life? Momoshiki just stood there, quietly watching Roy go away and then disappear from the back of the field of vision, and a gentle smile gradually came up around his red lips. You must survive, she muttered to herself in a voice that only she could hear. Then, a pair of eyes became firm and indifferent again. She slowly raised her hand and held the golden long knife around her waist. Clang out of the sheath. Flying pirates. Golden Lion Shiki. This is our home. You won't be allowed to come here. Momoshiki gave a cold drink, and the figure flickered and disappeared in place. Naval Headquarters Marshal's Mansion. There was still a suffocating roar from outside, and the artillery fire behind the clouds in the distant sky was constantly shining like dots of stars. The horrific movement of bombs bombarding the land caused slight shaking of the entire huge military fortress. Kong stared at the weird and thin figure on the balcony with solemn expression, and clenched his fists subconsciously, his face full of enemies. What's the matter, Kong? My old friend hasn't seen me for so long. Don't you invite me to sit in your office and have tea? What a rude guy. The figure made a gloomy, hoarse voice, and its voice was sharp and ear-piercing like steel that had been scratched across the blackboard. Boom. At this time, a bomb suddenly fell from the sky and landed on the ground near the Marshal's mansion, exploding a dozen or so Marines in that position to a terrible cry. The strong firelight suddenly illuminated the figure on the balcony. The silver-white hair was neatly tied up, the thin body was wearing a large blood-red cloak, and he was quietly leaning against the balcony railing in an aristocratic manner, with a cynical and evil smile hanging from the corner of his scarlet mouth. The blood color of his whole body made him look like a monster crawling out of the plasma. He had a blue fascinating rose pinned to his chest, and a slender, scarlet umbrella in his hand. Why did you appear here, Barlaric Letterfield? Kong gritted his teeth, a layer of cold sweat on his forehead. Lonely Red, Baroque Letterfield, one of the legendary great pirates of the Roger era. Unlike many big pirates of that era, this guy with a devilish smile on his mouth likes to go alone, and he didn't even form his own group of pirates. But with his own power alone, he won the reputation and status equal to Roger and Whitebeard. Naval Headquarters had repeatedly encircled him, but the latter easily escaped. Even more frightening is that once during the execution of the mission, Letterfield once easily killed a Marine Vice Admiral in the department. Facing this unfathomable guy, even Kong didn't dare to be careless. What's wrong? Can't I just come here and have a look? Letterfield turned the slender umbrella in his hand playfully, tilting his head. Today's Naval Headquarters is quite lively. As he spoke, he raised the umbrella in his hand and pointed to Marineford, who had become chaotic and full of artillery fire and killing. This kind of excitement has never been staged even in Roger's time. Marshal Sora's face suddenly became extremely ugly. This guy. As clearly delaying time. Unexpectedly, someone who likes to walk alone like you would join forces with Golden Lion. He said coldly. Joining hands? Letterfield hurriedly waved his hands, exaggeratingly denying. Don't think too much, I have nothing to do with that golden rooster. It's just, he suddenly showed a cruel grin. Naval Headquarters Marineford was captured by pirates, which is probably interesting. You lunatic. Letterfield's ridiculous words instantly made the already angry Kong unable to hold back. A strange, pitch-black breath quickly lingered on his incomparably thick arm. The explosive muscles on his arms bulged one by one like bursting magma. The moment the voice fell, his figure suddenly disappeared, crossing a distance of more than 10 meters, and appeared in front of Letterfield. This is a sacred place of justice, and you can't tolerate a group of dirty pirates here. Boom. It directly penetrated the atmospheric punch. Surrounded by an astonishing airwave, vigorously swiped towards Letterfield's head. Letterfield's eyes condensed, and the fierce light of playfulness flashed away. He didn't see any obvious movements, he just gently turned his slender wrist. That slender blood-red umbrella is suddenly lying in front of his face. Stubbornly resisted Marshal Kong's punch. The bursting sparks suddenly splashed, reflecting on Marshal Kong's angry face. What about the terribly strong armament hockey? You, known as Kong, even I don't take a punch from you head on. The corners of Letterfield's mouth glowed with blood, and he let out a gloomy laugh. But, are you sure you want to fight me here? You're weak subordinates, but can't stand our random blow. Letterfield stretched out his long scarlet tongue and licked the corner of his mouth, looking eager to try. Hearing his words, Marshal Kong's face changed slightly. But at the moment of such a daze, Letterfield in front of him has disappeared from his eyes. Come on, Sora, Let me see for yourself what qualifications you have to sit in the position of Marshal Marine. The sullen voice came from afar, and Letterfield's speed was so fast that there was no shadow. Kong gritted his teeth, and the blue veins on his forehead burst out like earthworms. He quickly glanced at the already completely chaotic naval headquarters under the military fortress, and sighed helplessly. The figure jumped up, stepping on the air and chasing in the direction of Letterfield's breath. That bastard is right, although I don't want to admit it. But if the two of them really go to war here, Marine does not know how many people will be lost in the aftermath of the battle between the two of them. Sora absolutely didn't want to see such a meaningless battle damage. Only, this feeling of being led by the nose is really uncomfortable. The fierce artillery fire ruthlessly tore apart the flesh and blood of the human body, and then turned into dark red blood plasma, staining the earth red. Damn. How come there are so many pirates? It's the flying pirate group. They dare to attack our naval headquarters. Ah. There are pirates behind. Boom. Do not want. The blood mixed with flesh and blood turned into a brand new soil. In the sky full of artillery fire, the pirate's grinning smile appeared more ferocious and cruel in the sound of the explosion, like a mad beast roaring. Everything in front of him turned into a distorted blood color, and the entire picture that came into view was like a meat grinder, ruthlessly destroying the fragile human body. Unimaginable. This is not a battlefield in New World. This is the Marine Academy that breeds rising stars of justice. Recruitment eggs. Let Lousy wake up. This is war. On the chaotic battlefield, a middle-aged Marine carrying a colonel's medal on his shoulder roared bloody, and he carried a saber that had been gapped in his hand and cut a hideous pirate in half. In front of the pirate, an extremely immature military academy freshman stared blankly in a daze, trembling all over. The boundless fear has encroached on his brain, making him unable to control his body at all, and he could only watch the cruel pirate rush towards him. Colonel Marine roared angrily, lifted the scared freshman with one hand, and threw it into the Marine reinforcements crowd behind him. But as soon as he finished this action, he felt a cold behind his back and let out a heavy muffled grunt. His back was ripped apart by a pirate's long knife. A mess. In addition to fighting against the powerful pirates from New World, the Marine regulars who came to the reinforcements also scored their energy to protect the recruits of the military academy, and they soon retreated in the seemingly endless crowd of pirates. But they can't help it. The freshmen of the military school have never personally experienced the cruelty of war, and many of them have never even seen a corpse in their lives. How could their fragile hearts and wills immediately accept this tragic picture like a slaughterhouse? You know, the members of the Flying Pirate Group are all wicked men from the sea in New World. Their methods are extremely cruel, and their strength is extremely difficult. They are not comparable to the kind of pirates in the first half of the Grand Line. In the face of this fierce pirate from New World, even those Marine elites from the headquarters felt thorny in a headache. Not to mention the recruits in the military academy who have never actually been involved in life and death. The battle was going on cruelly. Every minute and every second, countless Marines were brutally killed and fell to the ground. However, within a few minutes, the entire military academy, the teaching area that was originally full of sunshine and peace, was full of Marine and pirate stumps and arms. But the corpses and flesh and blood on the ground not only did not slow down the pirates' attack, but greatly stimulated their inner tyranny and wildness, making them even more crazy. Tisk tusk tusk ha ha ha. I didn't expect it. Marine, who was chasing our pirates in the sea, did you have such a day like a mourning dog? Ah ha 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 ha. Lousy, look at where you so-called Justice Marines can go. Admiral Golden Lion's fleet has completely sealed off the entire Marineford. You have nowhere to run. We can only stand by and kill the rookies of these military academies, as well as the ants in the civilian areas. The pirates' grinning laughter seemed extremely gloomy in the dark night of war, as if loss was roaring. They gushed from every corner of the block and completely surrounded the military academy like an undulating black tide. The soaring artillery madly poured down from behind the clouds in the sky, blowing up the military academy buildings one after another, and then collapsed to the ground. The whole ground was shaking and shaking in complete chaos and madness. How come there are pirates everywhere? A group of military academy freshmen hid behind hundreds of Marine troops who came to support them, leaning on a military academy's ordnance as a shelter, looking at the chaotic world with horror on their faces. War, this cruel term, was originally extremely remote for each of them. At the age when they were supposed to study hard and secretly accumulate their strength, they ushered in the world's largest pirate group sneak attack in this ordinary late night. Damn. This flying pirate group. In the crowd, the ghost spider gritted his teeth pale. They took advantage of the cover of the night and used Golden Lion's lion fruit ability to attack from the sky and directly dropped a large number of pirates into our civilian areas. Smoker bit a cigar and held the 10-handed hand tightly, as if due to excessive force, even his finger bones appeared blue. If this continues, we will inevitably collapse under the pirates' offensive. The mole next to him wrinkled his brows tightly. The faces of several of them were ugly to the extreme, but compared to the panic of other freshmen, they could barely keep calm. But the most important thing is that the Marines who were ordered to protect the military academy area have already been defeated under the attack of the pirates. It is estimated that it will not be long before the defensive circle formed by the Marine side will also be declared lost. Why don't the headquarters send more people over? Hina's pretty face was pale in surprise. The ghost spider shook his head and said with difficulty. A war has already started on the headquarters, and the Feikong pirates clearly intends to disperse the forces of the headquarters. For the headquarters, it is not easy for them to separate these forces. After all, Marineford is so big, they have to protect civilians in other civilian areas. When everyone heard what the ghost spider said, they all fell into a bottomless silence. Destruction and protection are two extreme terms. The reason is simple. Even if 10 pirates appear in the civilian area, the chaos they cause and the threat to civilians must be quelled by hundreds of Marines. Because pirates have no bottom line, they can hijack civilians. Can arbitrarily destroy buildings, can be beaten, smashed and burned. Can detonate explosives, but Marine must take care of the destruction of buildings and the casualties of civilians. The size of the naval headquarters army seems to be very large, but once dispersed towards the entire Marineford, each area becomes extremely limited and stretched. Gradually, all the freshmen discovered this fact. They may not have reinforcements. The boundless shadow of death quickly enveloped their minds. In the wind full of gunpowder and strong bloody smell, they looked dumbfounded in place. Seeing the dense army of pirates constantly pouring in their direction, my heart felt ashamed. The immature figure, like a sculpture frozen in the bleak wind, motionless. They stopped their movements. In the face of such a gap in the number of people, everything seems to have lost its meaning. The complex expressions of despair, unwillingness and pain are intertwined on his face, which is distorted. The ordnance gradually became silent. I don't want to die here. There were even new female soldiers who couldn't help crying. Everyone was dumb. I don't want to die here. Another freshman said with a trembling voice. The sound of artillery fire was still rumbling, and the closer and closer bombing made the entire ordnance as a bunker sway madly, and countless white-gray rustles shook off the top of the head. We are not ready yet. Another new student gritted his teeth. He covered his face with his hands, and tears couldn't stop falling from between his fingers. Yes, none of them are ready. They didn't really accept actual combat. They have never seen a real pirate. They should have enjoyed a happy time in the military academy peacefully. Although tired, but safe enough. Hearing the words of the new student, the others were silent again. If this continues, they will all die here. They raised their heads subconsciously, and once again cast their eyes on the chaotic battlefield. The sky is gray. Although the artillery fire has weakened a lot, they clearly saw that there was a terrifying pirate ship between the clouds, quickly dropping from the sky on the land of Marineford. The ugly and cruel faces of the pirates became distorted and narrow in their sight. The sound of Marines' hectic footsteps was heard everywhere on the ground. The fortresses with complex defenses were destroyed. They had never seen such a tragic picture in their lives. If he were here, what would he do? Suddenly, a low, hoarse voice sounded. Everyone was stunned and looked at the master of the voice. It's a mole. His face was extremely obscure, and a wry smile was pulled out from the corner of his mouth with difficulty. But his words caused a faint light to shine in the bleak eyes of other people. Yeah, what would he do if he were there? Everyone knew exactly who that mole said was. At the time when the war broke out, if there were no accidents, he should have been training on the school field, right? Marineford at 4 o'clock in the morning, he will not miss it. Day by day, night by night. But, the school field is a full 3 kilometers away from here. With the progress and scale of the flying pirate group's attack on the headquarters, it is impossible for him to come here, perhaps. He has retreated under the protection of other Marine forces? Or maybe, has he hid somewhere? Or maybe, he has become one of Marine's corpses all this time? Everyone dared not think further. No, he won't die. A female voice that was almost exhausted suddenly sounded, making everyone suddenly stunned. It's Hina. Her eyes were red, and her expression was unusually excited. He will definitely come and join us. We are comrades in arms and partners. Hina yelled with a determination that was almost pathological. The others looked at Hina blankly, and for a moment they didn't know what to say, they just sighed silently. Hina, the school is 3 kilometers away from here. 3 kilometers, maybe not much at all in normal times. But in such a time of war, in such a chaotic environment, surrounded by countless pirates and frantically attacking. Don't say 3 kilometers, just 30 meters is like a moat. He won't come. If we are lucky, we might see you again. At this time, the ghost spider said solemnly. His expression was unusually indifferent, as if to conceal his inner fear. If you are lucky. Yes, he doesn't know whether he will survive. Hina's face suddenly solidified. The ghost spider's words pierced her heart like a sharp needle, completely releasing her inner fear. She staggered and stepped back involuntarily. No. Impossible. We will all survive. She babbled repeatedly. The world is shaking. The flames of war are spreading, the pirate is grinning. The war is roaring. The eyes of the new students gradually dimmed, as if they had lost their light. They just stared blankly, stupidly, and dully at the battlefield full of corpses. As if looking for something that would rekindle their hope. Only blood and fire can catch the eye. Until a voice came from far away. 8 inner gates, 3rd gate Shengmen, open. Then, a bright green light rose up into the sky on the dim, bloody and fire-filled earth. In this bleak world, it looks so dazzling and eye-catching. The freshmen suddenly shined. Hina burst into tears all of a sudden. Because they all saw a scene destined to be unforgettable in their lives. There was a young man covered in blood and bruises. Standing in a sea of dead mountain blood, running and fighting frantically. Wherever it went, the pirate was torn to pieces almost instantly. And that boy's goal, but it is coming towards where they are. The eyes of everyone suddenly turned red. Looking at the injury on the boy's body far away. They are really unimaginable, that boy, during this short 3-kilometer journey. What happened? It's Roy. He is here. In an instant, everyone was speechless. The vigorous, rich green airwave, in this uncertain darkness, suddenly dispelled their inner fear and anxiety. This is a very magical feeling, even if they themselves can't understand it. Perhaps, there are always some people who just stand there quietly, they can make you feel at ease inexplicably. Student. What are you doing there? Come here now. This is not your war. As soon as Roy's figure appeared, many Marines who were fighting were stunned, and then shouted with red eyes, with an indescribable eagerness and worry. Then they froze. I saw Roy's slightly bent figure suddenly ejected from the spot. The moment the figure disappeared, a loud and deafening noise exploded. Boom. There seemed to be a roaring dragon roaring past the ground under his feet, suddenly shattering a shocking dent. When countless rocks and dust were scattered and exploded, the young figure entwined with green light had already entered the crowd like a tiger out of its cage. The speed is so fast that it is ultimate, and even the void has a fuzzy shadow. A green light quickly plunged into the crowd of pirates, and the violent airwave turned into a merciless weapon, blasting at least 10 grinning pirates out. Everyone was so shocked by the scene before them that they could not speak. This freshman, so strong. Roy. Is it the Roy that the military department asked us to learn, the self-disciplined Roy? So, he is a direct student of Zephyr Admiral. No wonder he has such a strong combat power before he graduated from the military academy. The regular Marines who came to support were stunned. I saw Roy's figure rushing right and left in the crowd of pirates like a ray of green lightning. Fists, elbows, whip kicks, knee bumps. They all seemed to be extremely simple and direct, close to body surgery. But in Roy's hands, it exploded with amazing power. The movements are as smooth as a cheetah, simply neat and not muddled. Really strong. A vice admiral from the headquarters looked at all this with a look of stunned expression, and couldn't help but exclaimed. Although it can be clearly seen that Roy's combat experience is not too rich, there are still traces of youthfulness in the face of many enemies that surrounded the past. But this kind of hardy battle, this kind of shock to the flesh. Enough to make anyone can't help but give birth to a feeling of enthusiasm in his heart. It's a pity that he doesn't know hockey yet, otherwise. Such a regretful thought flashed in the head of Vice Admiral, but he shook his head quickly. Roy is just a freshman in the military academy. Where can Master come to hockey? Boom. There was another loud noise, several pirates wailed tragically, and their figures turned into blood-stained broken wire kites and flew out. Roy's figure reappeared, his body was completely emptied within 10 meters, and the corpses of pirates were everywhere. He was gasping for breath, his face pale and bloodless. But his eyes still gleamed. Step by step, he walked in the direction of the freshmen of the military academy in the ordnance department. There were various fiery pains in his body, and there was a shocking bloodstain on his back, which made a piece of skin on his back spatter. Every breath becomes extremely difficult, as if the air has turned into a knife across his throat. He no longer remembers how many pirates he killed. Maybe 100? Maybe 300? He can't remember. Starting from the school grounds to the teaching area of the military academy. But the distance of 3 kilometers, he felt as if he had come a long way. From the suffocation, tremor and panic of the war at the beginning, to the numbness now, Roy only felt like a different person. But looking at the familiar and worried faces of the classmates not far away, he subconsciously clenched his fists. I became stronger. Whether it is the 3rd gate of the 8 inner gates or the control of the body, he has reached the pinnacle. After so long of tempering and fighting just now, Roy knew that he had stood at the top of his life's combat power. However, this is far from enough. He raised his head and looked at the surroundings, surrounded by pirates with crazily distorted expressions. The death of their companions did not put the slightest pressure on them. Suddenly he bent down, a dazzling bloodstain spilled from the corner of his mouth. Gia ha ha ha. Interesting. Here is a funny marine kid. At this moment, a pirate with a dirty braid suddenly rushed out of the crowd of pirates. His burly body was wrapped in amazing power and rushed in Roy's direction like a cannonball. Damn. It's the captain of the flying pirates, Gerald. A bounty of 750 million yuan. Marine Vice Admiral let out an exclamation subconsciously, and the figure rushed out. An unprecedented sense of crisis hit his face, and Roy couldn't help but burst into a cold sweat. He could clearly feel that the pores on his whole body were lifted up and exploded like waves. Gia ha ha ha. A recruit from a military academy dared to break into the encirclement of pirates. You and your ridiculous persistence, go to hell. Ridiculous marine recruit. A violent grinning laugh came from behind, very fast. Roy, who was already exhausted and bruised all over his body, could not react, and only had time to subconsciously raise his arm to block his face. This moment, the scene in my mind before on the school field flooded my brain like a spark of lightning. That burly figure with purple hair, the punch with all my strength. And the muscles that swell up under the generous uniform. Auras suddenly exploded in the depths of the brain. Iron body. Roy suddenly uttered a low and violent shout, and the strength of the whole body was quickly mobilized, and the muscles on both arms bulged like magma. Boom. That big black fist, like a heavy sledgehammer, fell heavily on his arms. Roy snorted, and the bloodstain at the corner of his mouth became more visible and clear, and the whole person flew out like a cannonball fired backwards. It turned out to be Iron Body. You marine recruiter has some ability. But what can this change? The squad captain level pirate with dirty braids was taken aback for a moment, and then he laughed frantically. For people like him, killing is to some extent enjoyment. The more the ant in his palm jumps, the more he enjoys this torture. He stepped on the ground with his feet, and when the ground was broken, he threw out again and flew towards Roy again. Pain. The intense pain came from the bones of his arms. It was overwhelming, almost making Roy's will blurred. The bone is cracked. Even if it's the most critical moment of success, one of Marine 6 style's iron body defense skills are comprehended. The fierce pirate wrapped armament hockey's punch, still piercing his defenses and smashing his arm bones. Roy gritted his teeth, and the blood on his lips grew thicker. He actually forcibly bit his own tongue, making himself sober. The figure quickly adjusted its posture in midair, trying to maintain its balance. But the speed of the pirate was much faster than himself, and he came to the front in a blink of an eye. Even Roy could see that ugly and tyrannical face, and the crazy, bloodshot eyes. Damn. Roy cursed secretly. Too weak. I am still too weak, facing this big pirate from New World. A squad captain of an imperial regiment, now he has no power at all. At this moment, run quickly, suddenly. A tall middle-aged figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Roy's pupils shrank suddenly. In the extremely narrow line of sight, the Marine Vice Admiral looked at death with a face full of determination, and waved the saber in his hand to cut down at the oncoming pirate Gerald. Snapped. The sound of the saber cracking sounded crisply in my ears, as if overshadowing the sound of artillery in the sky. Roy's whole body froze, only to see a swaying white gleaming endless light in front of him. The snow-white cloak with the word "Justice" as dyed with blood red like plum blossoms at this moment. Roy's eyelids flicked. The Marine Vice Admiral roared in pain. His ribs were hit by the punch of the piercing saber, making a crackling sound, and his figure staggered back. Roy subconsciously stretched out his hand to support him, and what caught his eye was an ordinary and mediocre blood-stained face. He trembled all over. Only the weak voice of the Marine Vice Admiral was heard slightly. Since Zephyr Admiral has agreed with you and accepted you as a direct student, then, you are Marine's future hope. You can never die here. Looking at the rough face with a soft and cheerful smile, Roy just felt like something hot about to gush out of his chest. Tisk tusk tusk, it's really hard work. It's a pity, if it weren't to protect that recruiter, you Marine Vice Admiral, you would definitely not lose to me so quickly. The pirate Gerald's grinning laughter came more freely, and once again stepped towards Roy and the two of them. Marine Vice Admiral's eyes suddenly became irritated, and he pushed Roy away. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain and stood up again, covering the horrible depression between his ribs with one hand, while raising the broken saber in his hand. Shouted hoarsely, "Protect the freshmen of the military academy. This is our mission." In an instant, in the entire military academy battlefield, the roar of Marine Vice Admiral's desperate effort echoed quickly, frantically intertwined in the roaring artillery fire, and it was extremely shocking. For justice. Next moment, all Marines on the scene roared with blood, raised the saber in their hands and attacked the pirate. For justice. The shouts of moving mountains and reclaiming the sea completely resounded throughout the military academy at this moment. Not just Roy, there were also those military school freshmen hiding in the ordnance hall, all looking shocked at the hundreds of Marines present, and then proceeded to launch a desperate attack against the turbulent pirate army. The sword is neighing, fists and feet are intersecting. Life is passing, the blood is splashing. Pieces of originally brand new, snow-white military uniforms were dyed completely red in an instant. From a distance, it seemed as if countless blood-colored battle flags were rising among the ruins of corpses everywhere. This is undoubtedly an extremely shocking scene. All the freshmen of the military academy looked at this majestic and sad picture dizzyingly, an emotion that had never appeared before, and began to rush out in each of them. The blood gradually boiled. One by one, those Marines who came to protect their new group of Marines. Although in this desperate situation, amazing fighting power broke out. But in the seemingly endless tide of pirates, it fell down soon. Rumble. The terrifying sound of artillery continued to be heard from far and near, and the dull explosions were deafening. In the flickering flame light, the bloody pictures in front of him seemed to be blurred and distorted. Are we too weak? Hina, who was already in tears, covered her head and cried bitterly. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Many freshmen are chanting this sentence over and over again. Yes, if it weren't for protecting their rookies, these regular Marines wouldn't be so difficult. What are you stupefied? You guys run quickly. Let's break it for you. At this time, the Marine Vice Admiral slammed into the crowd of pirates, but his burly figure was like a candle in the wind, which made people feel sad. I saw him showing a crazy face, completely giving up his defense, and attacking the pirate Gerald with red eyes. Other Marines quickly followed suit. Roy was stunned, and before he knew it, his eyes were already wet. The sound of artillery fire all around seemed to disappear, and the whole world was left with the angry shouts of killing from the Marines. Suddenly, his eyes flashed with determination, his breathing became extremely rapid, and the turbulent green waves on the surface of his body suddenly became vacillating. We can't escape, Roy said solemnly. His voice is not loud, but it is enough to attract the attention of freshmen not far away. The new students raised their heads subconsciously, staring at Roy blankly. Marineford has fallen completely. Roy continued, his eyes turned into an unprecedented tranquility, and he looked into the distance. The freshmen also followed his gaze. Look up. On the black sky, the artillery fire did not know when it had completely ceased. The thick clouds slowly dispersed. There. The pirate ships flying the Black Skull flag slowly penetrated the thick clouds and appeared in front of everyone. In the scene of war, 1, 2, 3. Hundreds of pirate ships armed almost to the teeth. Like a war behemoth with flaring teeth and claws, they wantonly opened their terrifying fangs toward the holy place of justice. On the deck of every ship, they are covered with pirates with a fanatical and fierce look. They carry various weapons in their hands. He stared at the earth below violently, grinning violently. The large forces of the flying pirates have officially arrived at Naval Headquarters Marineford. They landed very quickly, and even many pirates jumped off the deck before the ship landed, slammed into the civilian area, and caused shocking explosions and screams. Everyone immediately realized the meaning of Roy's voice. Yes, there is nowhere to escape. No matter where they are, they will face endless pirates. There is no point in running away. Although we are cadets, we are also Marine, right? Roy asked softly. The tone is very plain, as if just asking a homely question. The new students clenched their teeth suddenly, and their eyes were full of bloodshot eyes. They looked at each other. Then, stand up from the ground one by one, summoning courage. There is really no way. Ghost Spider hissed palely. Mole smiled and shook his head. Yes, we are Marine. Smoker stood up tremblingly. Military Academy, it's not the reason for us to escape. In just a few seconds, everyone wiped away their tears and stood up. They looked at the Marine Regular Army who kept falling to protect them, and looked at Roy, who was covered in blood. Agitated, the expression gradually became firm. Maybe they still have fear, tension and timidity in their eyes. But they stood up after all. Yes, the whole Marineford was in war. We kids, when can you still use young and military academy as an excuse to escape? Fight, at least, without regret, as a soldier. Die gloriously and bravely. Very well, you guys, would you like to believe me? A smile finally appeared on Roy's face. He twisted his neck. Everyone nodded without hesitation. Looking at Roy's injury, what's so doubtful about this issue? His bravery, his fearlessness, his toughness, his hard work, his self-discipline. He has already proven himself. Then follow me. Kill. Roy's eyes flashed with coldness, and his voice was full of murderous voice. Kill. The freshmen gritted their teeth and screamed, clenching their fists. Then cruel battle, here we go. On this day, this group of young people, following a teenager in their same grade, like their predecessors, put on the armor and pick up the long knife, bravely defend the justice in their hearts. Run away, avoid, has completely become an impossible thing. The flying pirates landed in Marineford on such a large scale, and fundamentally blocked anyone's retreat. There are no more excuses, there is only one battle. The freshmen clasped their weapons tightly, and looked at Roy in front of them with solemn and serious expressions. They are deeply aware of the gap between themselves and the fierce pirates of the flying pirates from the New World. There is no chance of winning alone, and they will only waste their lives in vain. Are you all ready? The pirates grinning and the neighing of swords were all around, and there were obvious vibrations and countless cracks in the ground under their feet. Roy tried to keep his breathing steady, recovering his strength as much as possible. He slowly turned around, looked at the immature faces about his age in front of him, and asked in a deep voice. Everyone smiled. This is the time. Is it important to be prepared? Very good. Roy is very satisfied with their response. He did not see retreat and hesitation in their eyes. What all of them didn't notice was that before not knowing it, they had already subconsciously started to obey Roy's orders, and felt that this was something that was taken for granted. This is a very magical thing. Even Roy didn't even notice this. He just didn't want his classmates to die here incompetently and powerlessly. Before I start, I want to ask you a question. Roy's eyes quickly scanned the battlefield. Marine's fierce counterattack, who came to support, slowed the pirates' offensive a lot. The assault squad headed by the Marine Vice Admiral has already torn a gap in the encirclement of pirates coming from all corners of the military academy. However, because of concerns about the existence of their recruits, Marine's offensive still maintains corresponding restraint. Are you afraid of death? Roy looked back and asked such a question. Everyone was taken aback. Of course I am afraid of death. I don't want to die here like this. The ghost spider held a saber in each hand, and a bitterness flashed across his stern face. Smoker, who bit his cigar, nodded in agreement. Just give me enough time to grow up. 3 years, no, 1 year later, I will definitely be able to kill all the pirates here. The honest sound of the burning mountain urn is authentic. My wife is still waiting for me to go home in North Blue. I can't die. After hearing the words, everyone looked at him suspiciously, thinking that this silly man has already married. Hina bit her red lips and said, I haven't married the person I like, and I don't want to die. As she said that, she gave Roy a cautious look, and a flash of blush flashed across her face that was originally pale and shocked. My girlfriend is waiting for me to get home and get married. One after another, all the freshmen present at the military academy spoke their truest thoughts. Roy listened, and when the last person had finished speaking, a soft smile appeared on his face. Yes, each of them has their own dreams and wishes that have not been realized, and they don't want to die here like this. As a Marine, perhaps the death on the battlefield is their final destination. But no one wants to die so innocently, so anonymously. At least, the current war is indeed not a stage for them to shine. I'm also afraid of death, Roy said suddenly. So, we must survive. The only way to survive is to protect me. Protect you? Roy's treacherous words made everyone else suddenly bewildered. What is this nonsense? If you are afraid of death, we are not afraid of death. Why let us all protect you? Everyone is selfish. If this is said by someone else, they will probably sneer in an instant. But the person who said this was Roy, the Roy who used to block bombs for them on the school field. So they decided to believe him. No reason. Just because he is Roy, that's it. Roy didn't explain too much, just turned around slowly. My life is left to you. Finished, a majestic and astonishing wave of air burst out of Roy's body. The green energy gradually changed at this moment, and the shocking eyes of the new students showed a deep blue like the sea. Quiet. Depressed silence, invisible throbbing. Cracks gradually appeared on the ground under Roy's feet. Countless rubble slowly flew from the broken ground, and then dissipated. This terrifying aura was so hard that the freshman couldn't help but back 2 steps in amazement. Don't worry, you will survive. We will all survive. Roy turned around and said this. Everyone stunned the store immediately. Because they saw Roy's face, a face like a devil, blue veins and blood vessels are clearly visible. The pupils of both eyes were covered with tragic bloodshot eyes. 8 inner gates, 4th gate, wound gate. Open.